Welcome to Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, where we watch a movie about people who go to an island for dark and depraved deeds, sometimes involving government officials like ambassadors, and then I stop because darn if this doesn't remind me of real life. Yes, Jess Franco goes to Epstein Island via Eugenie. So I watched a movie a few days ago about an older woman who tried to seduce the husband of a rather stick-in-the-mud woman who kind of controlled her daughter with an iron thumb to basically convince him to let her take her young daughter to an island where a bunch of Marquis de Sade aficionados would basically have their way with her, and by the end of it, you realize that she's being set up to be a sacrifice. Well, I'm watching this movie, and suddenly I'm thinking, gosh, this plot sounds very familiar. An older woman trying to lure young girls to an island where there's immoral things going on. And then it occurred to me, yes, current events. This is exactly what's happened in the Epstein case. And whether or not we get the files released or not, that's the basic gist of it. An older woman tried to bring in younger women to entertain the rich and powerful people in our society, and now it all seems to be coming back out. And whether or not the rich and powerful may still remain rich and powerful, well, that's a question for another time. But the mere fact that the plot of this wild and crazy movie from the 60s seemed to reflect current events made me want to give this movie another try. Even though this movie was done decades before the Epstein investigation, there's one little thing that I saw in this movie that I just cannot unsee that truly relates to today's current events. I'll tell you at the end, so stick with this program. So this movie begins with Maria Rom, who is laying in her bed in a city that I can't tell if it's, it looks super polluted from the end titles, but I really love these drawings here, so artificial. But we go into her room and we see that she is reading the Marquis de Sade, and she's really getting off, listening, reading and imagining the ritual that she is trying to envision from this book. And suddenly she gets a call, and of course it's Eugenie, and she invites her to come out to the island, and Eugenie is still game to come out. Eugenie is a little upset because she feels that she has no control or no freedom. So the father goes and meets with the Madame Saint Ange, as played by Maria Rom, and well, after a few get downs of major sexual negotiation, he agrees, oh, okay, you want my youngest daughter, I'll let her come. And so the next thing you know, there she is, going on her way to this private island run by two rich people, very ultra rich, a brother and a sister team. We don't really hear so much about what they do, but we know that they met Eugenie at a United Nations function. So we're talking about people who must, in this fictitious world, be very up in their government if they're meeting them at a meeting of an ambassador. You go a little further as she starts going into their library and then find out that she's reading the Marquis de Sade, which of course they totally encourage. And then, of course, you've got the two people who are helping them out who probably aren't getting paid what they're worth, which explains one reason other than the fact that maybe they actually have moral outrage in this movie. But one of them is upset when they find out he witnesses them putting drugs in the drink of Eugenie that causes her to knock out. And he's very upset at that. He confronts Madame Saint Ange about it.
The wine was drugged.
What of it?
You brought her here as a plaything.
I would remind you, Augustine, that when I saw you first, you were grateful to have enough to eat. You had nothing but the ragged clothes you wore. No future and no hope.
Business returns back to normal. Then, of course, on one of those nights, that's when the scary people, the scary rich people are arriving to the island, and these people, of course, like to dress as the Marquis de Sade dressed back centuries ago. So they have a classical look to it, and of course, there's Christopher Lee playing Domance. And an interesting story regarding Lee about this movie, and he talks about this. You can look it up on YouTube, but he claims he wasn't aware that he was in a sexual leading movie filled with nudity and debauchery and all that. They just brought him in to read a few things, and then he went back home and then later found out that his movie was being shown in a kind of theater not known for showing Christopher Lee movies. Anyway, I don't buy that. When Eugenie awakes from some of these mistreatments from the brother and sister, and of course from those party goers who traveled great distances to show up in costume. They tried to tell her that it was just a bad dream she had, that none of this really happened. And this works up until the second time it happens, and then she's convinced that this was not a dream. And this drives Eugenie into a fit of anger where she kills the brother. And then at that point, all the rich people in their nice ancient looking costumes show up, and suddenly they take their side. They are ready to also stab Madame Saint Ang, and so Eugenie also kills them. She kills the brother. She basically she gets revenge on both the brother and sisters and kills them both. However, then Christopher Lee comes up and congratulates her for that, but then says at any moment your mother's going to be coming with the police, and she will be arrested, and people don't look kindly on murderers. And at that point, Eugenie is so upset that she takes a run through the island. She doesn't even have time to put on her clothes. She's just running through the island naked. And then suddenly she comes across a graveyard because ultimately, whatever this group is, they seem to require the sacrifice of a young woman, perhaps a young virgin, a young woman that evening. And she sees a graveyard filled with past sacrifices. And she will not be one of those sacrifices, but she may be going to prison anyway. And so she's crying and kneeling. The next thing you know, we wake up and we're back where we're at the beginning of the movie. And we realize number of scenarios. This could have been just all in her imagination. Or she could have fallen asleep, and all of this could have been just a vast dream. But the thing is that this dream or this fantasy ended where she herself gets killed, her brother gets killed. And so what does she do at this notion that everybody's going to get killed in her fantasy? Wakes up, gets the phone call for Eugenie, and she invites her to come out to the island, and Eugenie is still game to come out, and she's still game to have her in spite of her dark fantasy. Is this something that she is going to try to work on, that she's going to try to make a reality, even if it does end with her death? These are a mighty sick group of people who ultimately don't even seem to care about their own demise. And I wonder if that was truly the case with this current crop of people, but it can't be because they're just holding on to the files so much. They don't want the truth to come out, unlike the people in the Jesse Franco movie who probably were tired of carrying the truth and were just kind of hoping that somebody put an end to their misery. In any event, there are other movies though that Jesse Franco made that concerned rich people going to islands for debauched purposes. Um, One of them was The House of Lost Women, and that was about a family who showed up because they thought that their father figure had done immoral things, only to realize at the end of the movie that he never really did anything. He just moved to just have that reputation of someone who was just leaving because of debauched circumstances. Then there's the sexual story of O. Now that one is a little bit more realistic. And this one, though, has the has a couple who have again seemed to have pledged that they would bring someone that they would totally debauch and then at the end kill. Again, this killing comes in the movie, and that they would offer up, I guess, as a sacrifice. So They bring her over and they have a bunch of sexual happenings, but then at the end, the guys who brought her there, they can't perform. They keep breaking down in tears, crying, I can't go through with it. But they don't, say exactly what it is that they have to go through of until finally at the end of it, one of them just goes crazy and starts killing everybody on the island, which kind of wonder why that didn't happen on Epstein's Island. But I just think it's pretty interesting that you have these fictitious movies about corrupt rich people going to islands, and now we see this happening in real life. But the one thing that I noticed out of this entire debacle is one interesting fact that is just not explained, and I've looked this up on web pages and books, and I can't find anything. But look at this pillow. Take a look at that. Who does that picture remind you of? Jess Franco, the luckiest movie prophet who ever lived. And thank you for watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater. And if you want to see more reviews like this, drop me an idea in the comments. And also don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be notified whenever we have new movies and new reviews and new topics for your consumption. Thanks for watching.